Hey guys, welcome to episode number 4 of the Obery Project's Criminal Justice series, a series that is mostly intended for and aimed at people out there who, in general, are not criminals, don't engage in criminal activity, or you've hit a bad spell of behavior and you need to stop and get out of it. But, there are a lot of people who end up going to jail and going before judges and magistrates and getting wound up in all kinds of bad state systems that technically were not committing criminal acts. They weren't hurting or defrauding anyone, not through theft or violence or extortion or anything like that. These are really the people that I'm talking to because I've had a lot of experience in this, because I ended up for a good 12 years, maybe more, dealing with an addiction to opiates. Whether we're talking about like pills that you would get from your doctor, where most of this really started was pills from the doctor. Tylenol 3, which has codeine in it, to hydrocodone like Vicodin, Lortab, Norco. These are hydrocodone, to oxycodone. There's a number of brands that have different kinds. There's instant release, delayed release, which were the big ones that were a lot of people were getting addicted to for a long time. Or if we're talking about street heroin, synthetics, things like that. And I can't tell you just the amount of people that I met that in general, these people they never really had it in their head to be a deviant, to engage in criminal activity per se. It's just that this addiction can make people do a lot of things they normally wouldn't do. Now, it's not just addiction or getting hit with drug charges or something like that. Some charges are just kind of ridiculous, like a PI. Now, a DUI, I can see, I don't think anybody should be driving under the influence of alcohol, period. I find that to be highly objectionable. And if you even get caught doing that, and I'm not saying caught by the police, I'm saying caught, period, doing that, the repercussions should be severe, because you are operating a seriously dangerous weapon impaired. And I do take issue with that. I'm not saying I don't take issue with my behavior when I was using opiates. Not saying that at all. But I am saying that there are certain things that are counted as crimes by the state. And if I say state, I'm talking about municipal, county, state, federal levels, the state, that aren't necessarily crimes. Okay, wanting to purchase a substance and use it yourself, that's not a crime. You're not harming anyone. You're not trying to harm anyone. Okay? But the thing is, the system, I remember the last time I got out of jail was, I guess it was May 2013, and I started looking into things, because even by then, I was really done with that whole string of addiction, and I only had like 1 or 2 brief relapses after that, and then got everything straightened out from that point forward. And this was soon after that, but I started looking into a lot of these things because information was far more abundantly available than it had been when I started down this road of this sort of life, because I didn't pay much attention to anything like internet and what was available on the internet. I had a laptop for a little while there, I think when I was in drug court, which I'll get to that. But I didn't really use it to its full potential. I would just maybe find out a website where something was at that I wanted to read or listen to if I had to for research, because I was going to college back then, because they the drug court required me to go to college. And it didn't require everyone, but me it did. But I really didn't understand how available a lot of information was, or how you could find information and distill it. And this was a long learning curve But when I got out that last time in May 2013, I started looking into some of these things because, I met so many people in the time that I was in and out of jail or in and out of county programs of various kinds, and a lot of them requiring that you stay at halfway houses, you go to AANA meetings, things like that. So I met and talked to so many people, in addition to my own experiences. And I started looking into all this because I did not see, at first, I saw the possession of, the sale of, or whatever, substances that they considered controlled substances, paraphernalia, all of that, as a crime. But the more I began to learn, the more I began to understand it wasn't a crime. And then I started finding out that, wow, all the signs are there that the same people that are turning this into a crime and prosecuting people for having it are facilitating it being available, and are setting these prices and are essentially designing these lifestyles that people who get addicted to these substances are sort of forced into, which is pretty sick. It's really sick. But there's a lot of sickness going around these days. There's a lot of things that are regarded as crimes that aren't crimes because they literally have to do with contracts that you've entered into apart from your knowledge, understanding, and conscious agreement, whether it's child support, possessing something they say is naughty. The PIs are really something. Because they can get you very easily with a PI if they feel like messing with you. It's not hard. And there's plenty of other crimes out there that were called crimes that relate to agreements that you didn't know that you had made with certain parties in the government. Let's say like tax evasion. Okay? Things like that. Now, if you are someone who is committing actual crimes, depriving other people, and specifically if the crimes and the lifestyle that you've chosen is a lifestyle that is centered around hurting people, especially those who are weaker than you are, or easy prey, then you are shit in my eyes, and I think you're just shit objectively. These same people tend to make a career out of, they're not harming and defrauding the big guys, the monsters out there, the corporations, and other big entities out there. They're not Robin Hood. They're not going after them. They are stealing from, extorting, and harming the little guys. Now, some people could say, well, this is a lot like the government in the sense that the government couldn't operate in the way that they do without a certain amount of consent from the people. Like mobsters couldn't operate if people didn't want to play the numbers, or if people didn't want to go to the whorehouse, and there's another one right there, prostitution. That's another one that they regard as a crime in a lot of states. And look, if two people want to engage in that for, whatever agreement, it's not a crime. Nobody's committed a crime. Sorry. But, I personally don't care about the criminals, don't really want the criminals off, let them, and in fact, most of the time, the people who commit real crimes, they get, as far as I'm concerned, oftentimes lighter sentences. Now, some of them will get very heavy sentences, and here's why. For this system to function in the way that it wants to, as far as this unspoken agreement, contracts, you going into a court and them doing business with you, as I mentioned last time. In order for them to function on that level, they also have to function on the level of common law, right and wrong. Did you harm someone? Did you kill someone? Did you deprive someone of their freedom? Things like that. They have to operate on both, and that's what makes it all so convoluted, is because they are operating on both. Now, okay, let's say you're just a regular guy and you did do something criminal, or that can be regarded as criminal and you didn't do it. Either which way, let's just say that. I would say the steps that I'm going to discuss next video, which is the Howard Freeman method and the thought behind it. Because if you get the video, which the next video I'll make in this series, I will link his video. And if you get that, the thing is, you have to listen to a lot of extra material in between him discussing the steps, as opposed to him just mapping it out. You know, this, and this. Now, he kind of does as he goes. But I'm going to just sort of apply, because he applies it to like a traffic court, and it can apply to a traffic court. But I'm going to apply it to so-called crimes, let's say charges, that I don't see as crimes because they're not harming another person, and how you would want to approach that. You would even probably want to use a few of those steps, as I said, if you were accused of something that is a real crime, just to make sure that the state's got what the state says they got, because they can prosecute all kinds of things that are real crimes under the state in a contractual context. And as I said, I believe in the last video, they don't care about the victim. If the victim is not going to push for this to happen and to get completed and for retribution and all that, the state, they don't give a shit. They're operating for their own benefit. And as I said, in any case, whether it's criminal or whether it's basically just code, contracts you didn't know you agreed to, they are doing business. They want to do business. And the problem is, a lot of people who don't understand that, we end up doing business with them. Now, this never interested me because I have any aspirations of continuing really in any of those activities, because somebody like Howard Freeman or other people who specialize in the law, they may have enough knowledge on a lot of things, and you usually have to have a lot of knowledge on a lot of things, like knowing UCC and knowing a number of different codes concerning like economic transactions and negotiable instruments even, and how banks are allowed to operate. You need to know this really big, full knowledge base. And since I spend most of my time dealing with the Bible and problems with history, geography, language, I just don't have the time. But I did put quite a bit of time into it just to protect myself, just to give me that initial amount of protection should something like this happen. And this is the whole reason that anyone, no matter if they have any history of being charged with anything ever or not, it can happen to people. I've seen people who are in their 40s, their 50s, that don't have any kind of record at all whatsoever, that end up in some kind of situation that they didn't foresee, and they end up in a jail before a magistrate or before a judge or something like that. And you should really know where you are and what your rights are, what you're allowed to do, and what you can do that is going to give you the greatest likelihood of getting free of that situation as soon as possible. Specifically, even if you had the bond money, you don't want to play ball with these people. You really don't. You really don't. Because once you play ball with them, you have a record of playing ball with them, no matter how it goes. Once you start doing business with them, There you go. It's on your record. Now they can arrest you, and an arrest goes on a record, but if they don't have any sort of conviction whatsoever, it was an arrest. So what? Somebody says, oh, it says right here you were arrested such and such and such. Like, for instance, if you went into a court down the road, and the prosecutor, for whatever reason, whatever context, and it should never even get this far, but if it did, the prosecutor said, well, you have this arrest and you have this arrest, and then you can say, in your defense, I don't have any convictions. I was wrongly arrested. And I've seen prosecutors that bring up arrests without convictions. It happens. But if you know what you're doing and you're a defense attorney, who's oftentimes going to be a PD, and you want to avoid that at all costs, keep those guys out of your end of the court. It happens. So, talking to police or just state officials. Okay, so let me bring you up to speed. It's 2009, and I had entered into the Porter County, Indiana, Drug and Alcohol Prevention Program, which most people colloquially call drug court. The circumstances behind why I decided to do that are their own story in and of themselves. Was it a mistake? It's done, so whether it was or not, I was in Porter County's drug court from March. It was like March 1st, 2009 to February 28th, 2011. So 2 exact full years. And that's not the schedule. Like, they don't keep people in for exact, like, there have been people in that have been in for a while, like longer than that. There were people that graduated shorter than that. Some of them, I don't know. But that's how long I was in. So there's this idea in drug court. What they do is they pull you in from jail to the court in which they have drug court, the judge who presides over it. And in Porter County, Indiana, the judge who presided over drug court the whole time I was in, I don't know if they still have it, they might, and she probably still does, it was Judge Julia Gent, who I had never been before as a judge in criminal court. I always went before a judge named William Alexa. So, you will go in, they will go, and you'll typically not go in unless they're going to accept you anyways, okay? They'll go over a few things with you. You got to sign some papers. Got to enter into a contract with them. And then what they'll do is they'll send you back to jail, and they'll tell you, we will be taking you out when there's a bed available. And at the time, there was only one men's halfway house, so you had to wait for a bed to be available at that halfway house. And I don't remember how many beds were there, 12, I don't know. So, I get in. You have to spend pretty much about 6 months at this halfway house and do the halfway houses program, which is completely independent from the drug court. At least it kind of used to be until one of the local lawyers, who was also involved in NA, decided to open one of his own. And I got a feeling that they get a lot of money from something like that. But anyways, there is an idea, there's a whole culture in these state so-called diversionary programs of self-reporting or telling on yourself. As in, like, I went over last time when I said I talked to that detective, where he told me, yeah, if you confess to this and tell us everything and so on and so forth, the judge is going to look very kindly on that. And it didn't feel like it when I got taken to jail and went before the judge. Didn't feel like it at all. So I don't know what unkindly would look like, but it didn't feel kindly. So the culture there is self-reporting, telling on yourself. Now, I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but the vast majority of criminal cases are oftentimes prosecuted. Convictions are gotten, evidence is gotten off of one of two things: either snitches or confidential informants, or self-reporting, telling on yourself. Okay? The great majority of work that police and police detectives tend to do is just typically writing up reports, paperwork. They're doing business. They're doing business. They're basically like a clerk. So in drug court, there's this idea that it's better if you confess to bad behavior or wrongdoing. Like, they're going to look at it as in you're growing. You know, you're really growing in this program. You did something bad, and you came to us and you told us, so you're really growing. Well, it's funny how they would do what they did, or how they would reward people telling on themselves. And the thing is, I started finding out really soon through the grapevine that really the people who got rewarded when they told on themselves, more often than not, they were rumored to also be telling on others. Those were the people who, when they would say, I messed up, I went off schedule, because you have to make out this schedule. Like, every day, you have to make it out. It has to involve certain things, your work, meeting schedules. They make you, like, do a meeting in NA or AA, like, every day for the first 90 days. Which I'm pretty sure the Moraine House, where I stayed, does too, but they do, even if you were staying at the new one. The new one that was started by a local attorney was called Respite House. And then there was Alice's house, that was the women's house. I'm pretty sure all of them make you do that, which is really, really depressing. A meeting, an AA or NA meeting, every day, and they can go like 1-2 hours. And like the same people will be talking at them too, like every time, man, these same people. And a lot of times you kind of have to wonder if these people that are there, that are always the ones talking, because in most of these, they're unstructured, where anybody can talk. Like, hey, I'm John, I'm an addict, and there's very few that they're really structured, as in they'll either go around the room, or there were some that would have like a ball. It was a red ball thing where, like, the person running the meeting might pass the ball to somebody, like, throw it at them. You better catch it. Better be paying attention. And then you had to do something, like you could just say your name, and you had to say you were an addict. You couldn't get away with, I don't think like this whole thing about you saying it's a disease and these 12 steps is the cure to the disease, and this whole like foundational thing with this Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob thing. That's all kind of shady. But yeah, I mean, I got a problem with substances, obviously. You weren't allowed to say that. You had to say your name, you were an addict or alcoholic. And then you could just say pass and throw that red ball right at somebody's fucking face. Pick the person who talks the most and whip it at them as hard as you can. Or not. Or you could just pass it along to somebody else. I don't know. One of your buddies. But most of the time they were unstructured. It's these same people, man. Honest to God, I started wondering if any of these people ever had a drug problem, or if they just came to those meetings for easy women, and that people pay attention to them when they talked. Because you have to be really polite and pay attention to people. And, you get in, especially if you're court ordered, and the courts, they love ordering people to NA and AA and all that kind of shit, right? And it's been my experience at the court. Remember, the courts aren't doing anything for the victims. They're not doing anything for you. They're mostly acting in their own interests. So you really got to think why it's like always these AA, NA meetings. Why? They're not acting in your interests. So anyways, that rabbit trail aside, it was about 6 or 7 months in that I was at the Moraine House. I was working at a fast food job because it was the only job I could find quickly. I had no car. I think my license was suspended at this point in time, which they were not really. I didn't have any means to. There was a fine that I had to pay with the BMV and other, hoops I had to jump through. I did not have the means. I had nobody behind me helping me out. Like when I first got out of jail and got into the Moraine House, my dad sent over my brother with some tobacco, a little bit of cash, and my brother used some, I think maybe used some food stamps or something, got me a bunch of food, because you could kind of keep your own food in different areas, and people weren't supposed to take food that wasn't theirs, but they did, because anyways, most of the people in there that I've ever met in jail or in diversionary programs or anything like that were not pretty decent, just regular people who got really caught up with addiction and ended up doing things because of addiction. A lot, really, I would say probably the majority of the people I met were just degenerates. They were scumbags, or they were criminals who happened to like drugs or who happened to get addicted to drugs. There's a difference. Anyways, so I had to get the closest available job, and they really hammer you about getting a job, and they punish you if you don't get one right away. So I wanted to get one right away. I got a fast food job, held that for quite some time. After about 7 months in the Moraine House, the thing is you're supposed to graduate in 6 months, but the deal is this: even if you complete all of the requirements that the Moraine House has themselves, but you don't have enough money to pay all of the fees that are incurred in your stay, they don't graduate you until you give them the money. Now, there's some people out there who they might do the stay, they might still not have the money, and they're not there for any other reason but maybe their family told them, enough's enough, you go or else, or whatever. They can just leave. They can just leave and be like, I'll see you later. I'll try to be getting you that money just as soon as I can. And some mean it, some don't. But with drug court, you had to pay that off because it was policy, and it was the only house they had to work with at the time. Now, I heard when this attorney who was involved with drug court, with NA, with AA, all of that stuff, and I'm pretty sure he also worked for the public defender's office. So this guy, any barred attorney is an officer of the court, hands down, period. Some of them are more, some of them are less judgmental about criminal activity. And all of these we're talking about are criminal lawyers we're talking about here, okay? This one was. But they're all officers of the court. Anyways, once he opened his place and more beds, and I heard it was just a lot nicer there to stay there and everything, I heard that drug court allowed people who were at the Moraine House who couldn't pay their last to skip out without the official ceremony or whatever. So you talk about pragmatism. Anyways, I was there for 7 months plus, could not pay that last little bit and get the graduation thing so I could get the heck out of there. And I was really tired of the place by then. Not necessarily anything against the people who were running it. I didn't think any of them were bad people. If anybody watched this that I was in there with, they would know who the people were that were running the place. And I know a lot of people did have issues with the staff. There were 3 staff there. They were live-in staff. There was the main director, and then there were 2 kind of sub-directors, and they would kind of move up if the main director got caught smoking crack like one of the old ones did. They would kick him out, and then somebody would get bumped up. Anyways, I really didn't have a problem with any of those guys. like, there were a couple of times I got into arguments with them, the staff, but come on. You get in an argument, you yell and scream at somebody. Just let it go. The next day, just, hey, we had a bad day. You don't always have to apologize for it. In my world, you don't. Not to me, you don't. So things were getting tense, and I was getting tense. And so they had just hired this guy who was definitely pretty career criminal, and not really a bad guy. I mean, I couldn't really say a bad word about him, but I knew that he had had a history with drug problems. He was kind of career in and out of everywhere. And I knew, oh, this is going to be an issue. And there was once or twice he showed up high. And I don't remember how it came down to it, but I think he made the offer to me, like, because he didn't know anything about the program I was in or anything like that, but he knew I had a history. I mean, all you had to do at that time was look at my arms, and I had these cavities where my ACs should be. You could see it. Anybody who's used for a long period of time, they know how that happens. You just get scarring, and what you do is you end up getting what they call a cavity just because you have scarring. And it just heals up that way, and that's just the way it is. So he made an offer. He said, yeah, I'm going up to Chicago and such, and you want me to, yeah. And the thing was, he was trying to play it as straight as possible. So I'm like, I can trust this guy. So I was like, yeah, okay. And I gave him enough to where it wasn't a huge loss to me. He was like, look, I'm going anyways. It's all good. And I was cool with this guy. Like, so he was like, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'll grab you something. He wasn't trying to use me as, and maybe he used my money so he could get a jab. And a jab is typically, with most dealers, if you buy $100 worth, you'll get 12, 13, whatever. I get different dealers have different, specials. And there's nothing wrong with that. Fine, you can do that. So he brought me back, I don't remember how many bags they were dimes, so $10. 2, 3, 4, I don't remember. And I was smart about it, and I asked for it on a certain day. And by then I was staying in a room, because if you're at this place, this halfway house, for this long, you're going to be able to name your room. And everybody wanted a certain room, and by then I was in that room. So you had almost total privacy. I mean, the worst you had to worry about was your roommate. And by then, my roommate had been in almost as long as I had been. And I don't even know why he was still there. But he was just always gone. So what they did was they would have drug testing at drug court. You would have to go to a packed office. They would have drug testing a lot of times on Friday, because most people would have to go in for an appointment on Friday. They would have surprise ones sometimes on Saturday. And then a lot of times they wouldn't on Monday. Sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. So I know I used Friday. Nobody called Saturday for the surprise test. Pretty sure I used Saturday too. So when Monday morning came around, and I thought to myself, oh boy, it's been 48 hours, and I'm telling you, I drank water like nobody's business that 48 hours. But I don't remember if there was somebody too that I was worried about, because there were a lot of people in that program. Some stayed at Moraine House, some didn't, some just at meetings. I was concerned about, like, are they gonna say something? Did they see me somewhere and I was looking pretty high? So I went in that Monday morning and I told my case manager. There was 2 case managers at that time. One was the main case manager, Barb, and the other one was like a... At PACT, the employees at PACT, they do a lot of things over there. Like they manage people's probation, they manage people who have to do certain alcohol programs and all that stuff. Okay, and they decided to give her a few, this woman who mostly managed stuff like that, a few of the drug court participants. And the thing they probably didn't really tell her, or that she just couldn't find out unless she experienced it, was drug court participants are a whole separate breed of individual than, say, the people you're dealing with who've got fees or need to do a program and you need to check the program and you need to do paperwork on them, or if they're just doing some probation and you just have to check up on, because probation's a completely different kind of thing. Okay? Which PACT wasn't necessarily into probation, but they did have some probation people. They did other sorts of things there. But probation was oftentimes something that happened at the courthouse downtown. But yeah, people in drug court, let me tell you something. They are a breed all to themselves. And you can't truly, fully appreciate and understand this lest you've been in drug court or have been around it for a long time. So, anyways, they gave her me, and I think they gave her me, and it's like, it almost felt like an insult, because they only gave her a couple. It's like me, and it was somebody else who was kind of more of your straight arrow, you know? And I think that was the reason, because they probably looked at me, and they looked at my record, they're like, yeah, I mean, we're not dealing with somebody who's been in and out of place like since juvie or committed any serious crimes in the past or anything like that, so we're going to give him to Wendy. But I think Wendy was like all wound up because like she was, you know, ex-military, and I got my own opinions about girls going in the military. If you don't like them, oh well. Anyways. And what the military does to them, really, when they come out. So, I go in there that Monday morning, and I'm thinking to myself the whole time, and I'm thinking, okay, now they keep reinforcing, because every Monday you had to go to this Judge Gent's court. Every Monday, it was at like 1 o'clock, and it went till it went. It went till it was over, and they would have each participant come up, and they would review. Okay, so if you were in stage, there were 3 stages of drug. They're not called stages, right? 3 steps in drug court. I don't want to confuse them with like the 12 steps. 3 phases. Phases. That's what they call them. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. In phase 1, you go every single Monday. You got to report every single Monday. Okay, phase 2, you go every other Monday. And then you guessed it, phase 3, you would go every 4, like once a month. So I would see this all the time. I would actually see, and I wasn't well informed enough to know that the people that they were letting off very easy, as in just tightening the reins up a little bit, maybe bumping them back as far as their advancement and phases or whatever, that these were exceptional cases, like as in they would talk about these people like the counselor they sent you to would be in the back room, you know, rubbing her hands with them and deciding people's fates and psychoanalyzing people and all that stuff before they made all these decisions. Like, I didn't realize how much went into all of this. But apparently they looked at me like, you know, we need to hammer him like every step of the way, because they did. I mean, I would look at other people who were serious, problematic people, and they'd go in, they'd tell on themselves, they'd say they got off schedule, they went and did this and that, they relapsed, they used pot. They did this, they did that. And they would give them like a warning slap on the hand or something. Very rarely did I see them send these people to jail. And so, naive me, I'm like, well, because they didn't drug test you every time you went in there. It would be random. That's the whole point. I'm thinking, if they drug test me today, I think I'm going to come up dirty. So if I tell them that I relapsed, and if I tell them it's because of all the stress, I couldn't afford to get out of the Moraine house, and, problems at work, and, and I just made a big crybaby story about it, I thought, this could work. This could work. I'm going to try it their way. I'm going to go with the system, because I've seen and I've heard, if you self-report, if you tell on yourself, it's going to go good for you. So, I made a terrible decision, and I told on myself. And when I told on myself, what Wendy did was she went right to Barb's office to figure out what the protocol should be. Because I guess maybe they had to decide, are we gonna let John off on this one and just discipline him, or are we gonna send him to jail? Because that's pretty much what they were discussing, I'm sure. They did go and give me make sure and give me a drug test and all of that, I think. Do you know something? Now that I think about it, I'm not sure that they even did give me a drug test. I'm not kidding. Because all I had to do, I don't think they did. Now that I think about it, I don't think they did. I told on myself. She went to Barb's office. 5 minutes later, the Porter County cops roll up, come into packed, cuff me, take me to jail. That was that. And now I'm sitting there in the jail like, what the F just happened? I literally went in and told on myself. And I had used 2 days prior. Listen, in 2 days, in 1 day, I've seen people in 1 day use and flush their system so hard. We're not talking about something that's like non-fat soluble. This is water soluble. This isn't like pot. Pot stays in your system a long time because it's not water soluble. This is all water soluble stuff. I've seen people flush it out of their system in 1 day. 1 day. And I don't know how awesome those tests are. They didn't test me, as a matter of fact, now that I think about it, because they had a service. They would do the drops, and they put them in these bags. They would have a packed guy that would go in the bathroom with you, and he'd stand over there. And if he was a new guy and he was trying to really do his job good, he'd actually get over there and look at your penis, and it was kind of dehumanizing. Yeah, but nope, because they would have had to have sent it away to get a positive test. No, they just sent me to jail. Because why? Because I told on myself. Now, what would have happened had I not? One thing is, I might not have even come up dirty. It'd been 2 days. Might not have even come up dirty. So, would there have been a difference? I don't know, because I didn't see a difference. The funny thing is, the people that I found this out as I went, maybe not every time, but a whole lot of times, And I found this to be the case in jail, and I found this to be the case in life, is that the people that were getting all of these chances for telling on themselves, that they used as the example. And this happened again later, by the way, when I was in phase 2. I wasn't in the Moraine house anymore. I had gotten out of jail, did a lot of work to get myself back in order, get into an apartment, so on and so forth, so on and so forth. Same thing happened. The same thing. Slightly different circumstances. I was with a different case manager. I was with Barb this time, who managed most of the cases. Wendy had gone to another job somewhere else. Slightly different circumstances. Same result. Same result. Same result. I did the same thing twice. Because I really thought the second time it's going to be different. And it wasn't. It's never different. It was always the same results. Always the same results. And here's the thing. What I didn't know now, what I do know, what I didn't know then, what I do know now. These people, cops, employees of the state in any capacity, it doesn't matter. You name it. Detectives, drug enforcement, whatever. Not only do they lie and deceive you, and their bosses, the administration, the whole system knows they do. Not only do they do that, but they are encouraged to, they are frequently trained to. I can't tell you, there's been at least a few times that a cop or somebody else had told me, well, if you had told us the truth instead of trying to tell us a story, this could have went different. Don't ever believe that. Don't fucking ever believe that. Don't you dare believe that. Don't you dare. Because there might be the rando guy who's, let's just say, we're going to use, for lack of a better term, cool. Okay? There might be that rando cop who you guys both grew up, or in the same town, so on and so forth. He knows you. If he shows up the scene, he knows. And he knows you well enough to know that this whole thing's not, something's kind of, stinks here. He doesn't have to answer to anybody else about the call that he is about to make. He might just be like, all right, I understand what's going on here, so on and so forth. And he might give you a little advice like, look, man, I would just, that will be such a tiny fraction of what could happen to you. Now, this is in police calls. Last time, again, I went over the whole thing about going in and talking to a detective. And look how that went. There are people who will tell you, and in the case of drug court, this point is moot. Because once you start doing business with them, you don't have any rights. And this is a good segue to what I'm going to go into. And I won't have time in this video to tell you the story about the last time I got arrested, which I will. I will tell you the story about that because it's a freaking crazy story. It's not the last time. It was the second to the last time. But it was the most significant one. The whole thing with drug court is a really great example of what happens when you enter into that courtroom, oftentimes in handcuffs for your first appearance. Now, I know in a lot of eastern states, because I've experienced this, in eastern states, what'll happen is they'll get you in right away. A lot of times the next morning, no matter when, except on maybe Sunday. And I don't know if there's some of them that actually do it on Sunday to make sure that within 24 hours of your arrest, you have a bond hearing. Now, I know that because that was the case in Florida. That's not the case in Indiana and a lot of other states where you'll actually see a magistrate like right away, and they'll decide whether or not you should get bonded. By the way, I wasn't given a bond because I was from Northwest Indiana, and they said I was a flight risk. Yeah, and on a case like that, maybe, but if they knew how little money and resources I had, they would have changed their mind. But anyways, neither here nor there. Typically, you're going to go into that courtroom for your first appearance, and that is when that's the moment of truth. It's not when you do your change plea, your omnibus, your anything. That's not the moment of truth. It's not the trial. The trial's not the moment of truth. In fact, for most people, if they don't recognize the real moment of truth early on, it doesn't hardly matters, except in a few cases, depending on the specifics and whether you learn. If you're a very good, fast learner and you get some people on the inside while you're sitting out a really long fight against the charge like I did, and you got some people that actually explain to you the way the system really works, and you make some moves that makes the system look and say, it's not worth it. That's rare. That's rare. Most of the time, your moment of truth is that first appearance, because that first appearance is going to be, here's the charges against said individual. Do you understand the charges? That's the moment of truth. And that's what I'm going to go over next time concerning what Howard Freeman had to say about that, and concerning, are we talking about criminal, are we talking about common law, or are we talking about what a lot of people for a long time called admiralty law? And they're not wrong. These days, it's really been more convoluted into... it is contract law. It is contract law. Because you, at a certain point in time, decided to enter into a contract unbeknownst to you. But they're not going to call it that. Okay? They're going to usually hem-haw about what kind of law it is. If it's not criminal law. If it's criminal law, then you might be sitting it out for the duration. But if it's not, and it has anything to do with contracts, and you weren't hurting anybody or anything like that, different story. That's your moment of truth right there. So the way that drug court is a good illustration of it is you had no rights whatsoever, period, in drug court, period. You were at their absolute mercy 24/7 for the entire time you were in until, and here's what would happen, until if you got kicked out, you got expelled, terminated, they called it, from drug court. Upon termination, that contract would be ended and you would be sent back to your original criminal court, and then everything would proceed from there. And by the way, all that time that you spent in drug court, and there were a lot of people, I saw so many people get terminated. By the way, if you got terminated in drug court, you bet your ass that most judges are going to look at that as an aggravating circumstance against you when they sentence you. And most of the time you don't have a leg to stand on by then because you've already pled guilty. When you enter drug court, you have to enter a guilty plea. So you don't have a leg to stand on. It's a meat grinder. It's tough stuff. But it's a good illustration of how once you say, yes, I understand the charges, Your Honor, that's it. You're now doing business. There's only a few cases where you could do a few things, like I said, depending on all of the circumstances added together, that would help you out. As soon as you say you understood those charges, well, in the famous words of shit, a lot of people I've known, you're fucked. That's just the long and short of it. You're going to have a heck of a time. You are now paddling upstream, and the river's rough, and it's raging, and you're going to have a heck of a hard time of it. So, I'm going to conclude the talking to the cops and the telling on yourself culture. It's even, YouTube has a tell on yourself culture now. When you fill out all the stuff for YouTube to publish a video up and all that stuff, now they have a whole section where they want you to tell on yourself. Does your video contain this or this or this or this or this or this? Which, of course, you know, based on their community guidelines and their standards in the contract you agreed to. If you tell them, yeah, it contains, yeah, sure. You're just making their job easier for them to take away what few shekels you might gain from your YouTube existence. And most people who are decent people, good content creators, good ones, not quality production ones, but good, aren't really making significant shekels on YouTube anyways. But it doesn't work when it comes to them either. So forget it. Get it out of your head. Don't even think of it as an option if, God forbid, it should happen to you. And with that, my next one will be about the whole process of that first appearance and what should be said and why. And it is going to be what Howard Friedman taught. And I am going to discuss whether or not I think that it is still a very viable option and how long I think it's going to be a viable option. Because I don't think it's going to be one for very long. And I do think there's not many people who really understand the law enough. So if you did take the time to figure this out and understand why it works in the way that it does, you'd be in a better state. Okay? Statutory law is what a lot of times they'll call it instead of admiralty, which is relatively correct to call it that, but I don't think it's all that ethical. So this Saturday, we'll be doing the first Their Story live stream, and a lot of new things are coming, and I want to thank everybody for showing up to the last live stream test and for watching this video. And please, it does help the algorithm if you're not subscribed, to like, and to leave a comment. So thank you again. See you next time.